Hey everybody, this is Joe Joseph, and this is the DailySheeple.com's Daily News Brief. I'm going to get started with an SHTFplan.com piece. Basically, it was Zero Hedge that posted an article saying that the truth is what we say it is. Obama signs Orwellian law setting up a fake news Gestapo. See, this is the way it goes. The Ministry of Truth, just like 1984. And of course, over at SHTF Plan, there's an editor's comment that says the federal government has long been at odds with the truth. It thrives in a cesspool of spin, lies, and misdirection focused constantly around fixing the facts. Why anyone gives any credence to anything said through official Washington channels is only explained by an honest assessment of the helpless and indifferent captive audience that makes up the body politic. This government has weaponized its lies, though it is weak and full of holes upon close inspection. A constant dribble of propaganda has coursed venom through the veins of the American people and of targeted populations overseas through a deliberate and thorough campaign to manipulate reality and control the narrative. That poison, acclimated itself as the new standard, causes ordinary people to believe and buy into silly Santa Claus stories about why our foreign policy lands so many destructive and inept blows. Psychopaths offer cold-faced lies as the daily desert to gullible people. And they lap it up, intent on cheering on their own enslavement. Now, President Obama and the overwhelming majority of Congress, have championed more and more lies, doubling down on their failures and brazenly spitting back at all attempts to call out their lies and hypocrisy with a heavy backhand of repression, censorship, and the chilling of free speech against all who dare to dissent or even look up and wonder about how things became so distorted and ugly. In the name of fighting Russian fake news propaganda, American rights are trampled upon once again. Is this the start of a dark era of high-tech Cold War paranoia to control the message? Is this why the alternative media and voices across the internet must be shut down? It's a good question because on late Friday, according to Zero Hedge, the U.S. population, of course, embracing the upcoming holidays and oblivious of most of the news emerging from the administration, Obama quietly signed into law the 2017 National Defense Authorization Act, which, of course, authorized $611 billion for the military. But it goes a little bit more than that. It says today, this is a statement from the White House. Today, I have signed into law S-2943, the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2017. This act authorizes fiscal year 2017 appropriations principally for the Department of Defense and for Department of Energy national security programs. It provides vital benefits for military personnel and their families and includes authorities to facilitate ongoing operations around the globe. It continues many critical authorizations necessary to ensure that we are able to sustain our momentum in countering the threats posed by the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, and to reassure our European allies, as well as many new authorizations that, among other things, provide the Department of Defense and Energy more flexibility in countering cyber attacks and our adversaries' use of unmanned aerial vehicles. Now, much of the balance of Obama's statement blamed the GOP for Guantanamo's continued operation and warned that unless Congress changes course, it will be judged harshly by history. But while the passage of the NDAA and the funding of the U.S. military was hardly a surprise, the biggest news is what was buried deep inside that. Now, in early June, there was a report on a bill to implement the U.S. its very own de facto Ministry of Truth. And that was H.R. 5181. And in that bill, it was sought to have a whole government approach with the bureaucratic restrictions to counter foreign disinformation and manipulation, which they believe threaten the world's security and stability. Also called the Countering Information Warfare Act of 2016, S-2692. That was introduced by Senator Rob Portman, and that legislation represents a dramatic return to Cold War-era government propaganda battles. Listen to this, quote, "These countries spent vast sums of money on advanced broadcast and digital media capabilities, targeted campaigns, funding of foreign political movements, and other efforts to influence key audiences and populations. Portman explained, adding that while the U.S. spends a relatively small amount on its Voices of America, the Kremlin provides enormous funding for its news organization, RT. Now, Portman continued, he said, there is currently no single U.S. governmental agency or department charged with the national level development, integration, and synchronization of whole of government strategies to counter foreign propaganda and disinformation. Let me stop there. If you go to RT and you see what they report, all they're doing is reporting the news. That's it. They're doing what the Fourth Estate doesn't do. Why? Because the government doesn't want you to know what's really going on. So what did Russia do? Russia came over, set up a legitimate news agency with legitimate people. I mean, you've got veteran journalists over there, one of them being Ed Schultz, who, whether you like him or not, he's been in the business a very long time. Does that make him a disinformation agent because he took a job with RT? I don't think so. I think that when I look and see what RT disseminates, at the end of the day, just like any mainstream news organization or any other alternative media organization, you have to use your discernment to understand and to validate the authenticity of the information that you're seeing. And sometimes that takes a little bit of research. You should never, ever trust anything at its face value. Never. Why should you trust our government? How many times have they killed people in experimentation or gassed their own people in these exercises to see, let's see what this biological agent will do on a populace? How about drilling in our cities and, doing live fire drills oftentimes in these cities? For what? For what? Because they're here to help? Because they're here to keep you safe, right? And it's just like David Rockefeller said back in the 90s when he was addressing Bilderberg in Baden-Baden, Germany. When he thanked the mainstream media and the newspapers and everybody else for keeping quiet so that they could advance their world agenda, because it would never have happened had it been put in the limelight. He thanked them. Said this new world order would never have come to pass. But this is what we get, right? If the citizenry go ahead and hold our non-representing representatives accountable, if they hold our bureaucrats accountable, what happens? They don't like that. They don't like that at all. Accountability? Oh, no. We don't like accountability. We just like to make our pockets fat with special interest money and then be their cronies for life. Because we'll just have the elections rigged after that so that we can stay in here for 40 years and not only suckle upon the milkless teat of the citizenry, but also suckle upon the milk-filled teat of special interests and corporate interests, because that's where all the money is. That's where all the power lies. We're facing a time now where people were fighting at the turn of the 20th century, only they didn't have the internet. So they were kind of hamstrung as far as, anything that they wanted to put out, any sort of information they wanted to put out was put out via print media. And then that print media had to be distributed by hand. I mean, we've got it a lot easier now with the internet. Absolutely a lot easier. And all you have to do is keep putting these sites up and out. We don't need to rely on Facebook. It's like saying that we need to rely on the New York Times for news or the Washington Post. No, we don't. Everybody in this digital age is a citizen reporter. Every single one of us. And it's our responsibility to provide the accountability when the Fourth Estate doesn't do it. It's that simple. If we just did what we're supposed to do, which is provide that accountability, I'm telling you, things get a lot easier from here. It really does. But it takes work. It's kind of like the Constitution, Your constitutional rights aren't just something, we say that they should be granted to all humans because in essence, they're natural rights. And all the Constitution does is just kind of remind you what they are. But unless you're willing to defend them, then what is it worth? That's the question that we have to ask ourselves. If you want real news, if you want to be well informed, you have to fight for it. You just have to fight for it. And they're going to make it hard as hell. But you know what? We'll persevere and we'll press on and we'll be successful. Now, I can tell you that after doing a news shot yesterday about some of the policies that future President Trump is going to enact, it looks like he's going to be shaking up the White House press corps. If that's the case, I'd be interested to see if he allows some that are classified as alt-right into the White House press room. And if he doesn't kick a few out that have been there for so long. Because I know that the mainstream media is pretty ticked off at the change in tradition and decorum that's been in place now for decades. So that remains to be seen. In other news, science warning, says the Express. Messing with genes could wipe out geniuses from the earth. You know, as if it's bad enough that they're not trying to dumb down the populace, either through the education system or by hijacking the media. Now, gene editing. Yeah, you know, we just create the perfect human. But in doing so, we eliminate that chance for there to be the savants or the true geniuses of the ages like the Edisons, the Teslas. It says new technology which allows medics to ensure children do not inherit diseases could also mean the likes of Thomas Edison, who invented the light bulb, might never be seen again. This according to Dr. Jim Kozubek. His claim comes as the U.S. and China prepare to stage mass trials to edit the genes of cancer patients to ensure it's not passed down in their DNA. However, Dr. Kozubek, author of the modern Prometheus, editing the human genome with CRISPR-Cas9, says the breakthrough is not necessarily a good thing and could see future generations of geniuses wiped out. You know, he's absolutely right. You know, these CRISPR kits you can actually buy for as little as like $400, I want to say, maybe even less than that. And that's not to say that people would be able to use them or know what they're doing, but they're readily available. And this technology is something that, if you look at biblical times, this is exactly why God had to flood the earth, was because the human genome, all genomes were being messed with. They were being manipulated. You had gene splicing, you had animal splicing, you had species that were being spliced together. You had plants that were genetically manipulated. Everything was genetically manipulated. It's like GMO, only it was on a global scale at that time. And now we're seeing the same thing, as was in the days of Noah, so will be in the coming of the days of the coming of the Son of Man. Here we are, standing at that precipice right now. You know, Thomas Edison, it says, was kicked out of school. Tennessee Williams, as a teenager on the boulevards of Paris, fell afraid of the process of thought and came within a hair's breadth of going quite mad. I mean, these are notable people, you know, that suffered from illnesses that, you know, they're trying to do away with via gene splicing. Scientists tend to think, says Dr. Kozubek, they tend to think of variations in life as problems to be solved, deviations and abnormalities outside of a normal curve. He says in reality, evolution does not progress towards an ideal concept or model, but rather is a working or tinkering towards an adaptation in local niches. It's very interesting. So, of course, China took the lead. They're pressing forward with gene editing in human beings. And I guess the United States said, well, you know, can't let China get ahead of the ball game, so now we got to get into it. And that's not to say they haven't been doing it already. I'm sure DARPA has been well into gene editing and gene splicing in human beings. I'm sure they have. Super soldier programs, things like that. I'm sure that there's been some sort of activity in that regard. And, you know, that just goes to show you, again, we have to be ever vigilant because you will not see the mainstream media report on this kind of stuff. You just won't see it happen. In other news, the Daily Sheeple, New York Police Department, this is a police state article. The NYPD raids the wrong home and then posts humiliating photos of the incident on Snapchat. I mean, as if it's not bad enough that the NYPD ruined Christmas for an innocent family. Last Thursday, officers from the NYPD raided a home in Brooklyn, handcuffed the family living there, and posted photos of them on the Snapchat social media app. Unbelievable. Problem is, the cops raided the wrong house and humiliated the wrong family. Not that doing that to anybody would be cool anyway, according to Lily Dane. Kimberly Santiago, 28, said the photos that were posted on Snapchat app shows her relatives being detained as warrant squad cops rummaged through her Dermont Avenue apartment in Brownsville on Thursday morning. The officers spent about 3 hours rummaging through the apartment while the family members were handcuffed. NYPD denies that they had the wrong address, but would not reveal who or what they were looking for, citing a pending investigation. Of course! Santiago said one of the cops stood watching the group from the door, typing away on his phone, and she assumed he was texting someone. But after the officers left, she saw a picture on Snapchat under the New York Stories section, and it was her and her family handcuffed. You know, I just got to know, is there any decency left in the world? If you're a civil servant, especially one that's entrusted with public safety, why would you do something so stupid as to deteriorate or erode whatever's left, and I don't think there's much left, of any trust the public has in you, by posting embarrassing pictures of a family, regardless of what you may think they have done, on social media? Is that a professional way of doing things? What? It's almost akin to like fat shaming. People commit suicide over that. And here the NYPD's posting these embarrassing pictures of people. Whatever happened to innocent until proven guilty? If I was that family, I'd be suing the piss out of them. Honestly, I mean, that's how I feel. Unbelievable. The police state knows no decency. They have no manners. You know, it's like we're dealing with unruly children. It's unbelievable. My heart goes out to the Santiago family. I mean, I can't believe it. On-duty officers should not be using social media on public time, doing their official public execution of their duties. Freaking Snapchat. Unbelievable. But it doesn't stop there, because a California man, again a TDS article, faces charges for driving under the influence of, guess what? Caffeine. That's right. It says a man in California is fighting a DUI charge of a very unusual kind. The only evidence the DA had provided of his intoxication is a blood test showing the presence of caffeine. Joseph Schwab was stopped on August 5th, 2015 while driving home from work. Schwab was not pulled over by police. He was stopped by an agent from the California Department of Alcohol Beverage Control who was driving an unmarked vehicle. The agent claimed Schwab cut her off and was driving erratically. So she was given a breathalyzer test. Guess what it showed? 0.00. That's right. He was booked into the county jail and had his blood drawn. And the resulting toxicology report came back negative for benzos, cocaine, opiates, THC, carcipidol, methamphetamine, oxycodone, and zolpidem. The sample was screened a second time by a laboratory in Pennsylvania, and according to documents, the only thing they got a positive result on was caffeine, a substance likely coursing through the vein of every driver on the road. And here he is with a misdemeanor driving under the influence of a drug, a caffeine. Folks, I mean, if you're not outraged, I don't know what it takes. But I can tell you, I drive under the influence of caffeine every day. And I'm just fine, as well as many, if not all, Americans out there. And this is just another money-grubbing scheme by the state to shake down the people and to rob them of their hard-earned money. No bueno. The police state out of control. I'm Joe Joseph. This was the DailySheeple.com Daily News Brief, and I'll have one again for you tomorrow. Have a great day, everybody. God bless.